Welcome to the Dumb Idea Podcast with Mike and Alex. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share this video or podcast on any platform that you're listening on. Please visit us at www.dumbideapodcast.com. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, there was a story that hit all the news outlets, but it kind of fizzled out fairly quickly, like most things in the current news cycle do. And it was a story about a gentleman in New Jersey who his wife had a rare brain, I don't want to call it tumor because it wasn't cancerous, but it was a growth in her brain. He had also had cancer years ago and survived. And I want to say his sister had died last year of a rare brain cancer as well. So he did some digging, and he started connecting with some old high school pals. Now keep in mind, this guy's probably in his 50s or so. In 1999, he was 27. So he probably was in high school, 10 years, 89, 87-ish. So he probably graduated in 87. When he was 27, he got his benign brain tumor. And so basically he started reaching out to other people he went to high school with. And he found out that another 110 people had rare brain cancers or non-cancerous tumors in their brain. So he wanted to do some research. So he ended up doing some research, and he's making a kind of he's equating it to some radioactive material exposure. Now he hasn't had a chance to kind of reach out to other class years, I imagine, or ones too far away from him. But after they did some research, they found out that area used to be an intake. I believe 30 miles away, there used to be an intake facility for nuclear material that would then distribute it to nuclear power plants around the country. But there was some waste there. And when that facility was decommissioned, they essentially buried some of the old material. And then the school was built in 1967. And they think that some of the material was used in the building of the school. And so this got me thinking. This guy only did a little bit of research, and he already found 110 people. And I'm thinking, what kind of rabbit hole could I go down with this? What if this guy finds that through a lot of these different class years, thousands upon thousands of people that went to that high school because of where the dirt they used and just, I guess they said like some of the nuclear material spread to lawns and other stuff by winds. And I believe there was a remediation of the residential properties, but they never figured out that it went to the high school. I wonder. It kind of reminded me of the Aaron Brockovich situation, where people were getting sick from this town. The groundwater got contaminated from a company out in, I believe it's California, called PSEG, which still exists to this day, which is the power and utility company. Water got contaminated, people got cancer, people died. Story of Aaron Brockovich is she found all this out, equated it to the issue with the groundwater contamination, and she did a class action lawsuit to get all these people some money. But that was only because she found out. Now this guy's finding out about this, but I was wondering how many of these situations, around the world, I guess, where a company screwed up, there was a cost of life that occurred, and none of these companies wanted to take liability because they didn't want to pay out the settlements. Because it always turns out they always know. Mm-hmm. Once they go to court and they pull the internal emails and internal documents. There's always like the scientist or two in there that are saying, oh yeah, this is real dangerous. We probably shouldn't do this. Right. It's going to kill a lot of people. And then someone above them says, screw the people. We're making some money.
Right.
And I wonder, like, a lot of it probably hasn't come out because, you know, relatively speaking, the internet's still new. Right. But now that people like this guy, like 89, like if he graduated in 87, 88, 89, he came along when the internet was still new, right? But he knows how to use it. Mm-hmm. The older generations don't. Like my mother and the internet, it's a lost cause. But now that this generation, like they're starting to get the illness, like the long-term illnesses, and they're smart enough to say, well, hey, maybe some other people were affected by this too. I wonder how many more things like this we're going to find.
Oh, mesothelioma, right? I probably butchered that. Like,
mesothelioma?
Mesothelioma.
But I'm saying, like,
were you going to say miso soup?
Miso. Right. But that's a great example of something that affected millions of people. They knew, someone knew.
Well, that was the asbestos in factories, wasn't it?
Well, that was factories. That was shipyards. Around here, we get the ads for people that worked at Bethlehem Steel, right? Because they built ships, and essentially, the entire interior of those ships was made out of asbestos. So, and you see the class action suits, and are you in a loved one? But they have to advertise. The thing is, like, with the internet, all these people can connect, and you can put it out there. You could start a Facebook page and instantly get people who are, now of course you have to be vetted, but put it out there and immediately start getting all these people connected. Like, hey, I wasn't fine, but say, my sister had cancer and died 10 years ago from it, and now she went to that high school, and start connecting all the dots. So, yeah, I think with that it's going to be interesting. And then when you said they used part of the material to build the school, like what did they use, rocks or something to make cement or concrete or something to?
I think they used some of the contaminated dirt as fill dirt in the school.
Okay.
Now don't get me wrong. I mean, after a while, the harm from the radioactive material probably goes down quite a bit. But I think that takes a long time. And if that school was built in 1967,
yeah.
I can't imagine that was buried for too long before they used it.
Right.
And I don't think they knew they were, like, I think the people who built it didn't realize that it had the material in it. Mm-hmm. I don't think they were told.
And this school is, because I was actually up there when this story kind of broke locally, in the New York metro area. So I saw it on the local news and didn't know it would get national traction, and it did for a time. But back then, it's because you look back and you see, like, it reminds me of those black and white films from the 50s where they'd be like, atomic energy, the power of the future. And look at Bill, he drives his car that's powered with an atomic reactor. Right. Like, and it has that weird voice, and then, but they were like they actually took a B-36 Peacemaker and put I think it was a B-36. They put a nuclear reactor in it, and we're flying this thing around just to see the feasibility of. And look, I'm very pro nuclear energy, but at that point, like, they didn't understand, or they didn't care about the what would happen later on. It was like, just get it done, and then you had the women that were painting the gauges on aircraft with the radioactive paint that all got cancer from. They'd lick the paintbrush to get the fine detail in.
Right.
So,
well, they had they got nuclear power on subs now. So, I mean, now obviously they made it safer. It's on ships and subs. I mean, but I always, it kind of brought me to wonder though, how many of these stories are going to get unearthed? I'd say in the next 20. Well, I'm going to say, how many? Well, but the reason why I ask why they're going to get unearthed now is because of the internet. And again, like, that generation was probably the first generation that kind of came along with the internet, so they know how to use it better. Like I said, my mom's generation, it can barely do email, right?
Yeah, so 89, someone who graduates, late 80s, early 90s, they're solid Gen X. Like they,
I mean, the '90s was AOL, wasn't it?
yeah.
I mean, that's when everyone got the dial up. So I mean, it's
Mid
not
90s.
it's not foreign to them, is what I'm saying. So like, that's why I'm wondering, like, as more and more of those people connect on like Facebook and whatnot and other places, and they just happen to stumble across each other and find each other, how more of these things come along, and then do more conspiracy theories kind of spring out from this,
Well, they're
like all the
already-
cover-ups.
And they're already happening, right? I mean, you have all these pesticides that they're using in crops to like enhance the food and make them bigger and this, that, and the other. And now suddenly, when I was growing up, there wasn't a peanut-free table at school. Right?
No.
There wasn't a concern that Johnny, if he sniffs peanut butter, is going to go into like shock.
Anaphylaxis or something. Yeah.
And now it just seems like, it's now very, very predominant, right? And like, everyone points to, they're using all these, hormones and, and cattle and beef and chicken and other and stuff that they're spraying on vegetables. And listen, and those right now are conspiracy theories because nothing's ever really been confirmed. But I think that's going to be the next mesothelioma, right? Like in 20 years, we're gonna have. Hey, did you eat chicken?
Right.
Did you eat Purdue chicken from 19, whatever, from 2000 to 2020? Well, you might be entitled to financial compensation, right?
By the way, we're not saying Purdue ever did this.
No. I just that's.
Well, look at
that's my favorite chicken. That's right.
the talcum powder thing.
Oh yeah,
Did you or a loved one?
baby powder, dude.
Yeah, there was the talcum, the powder that women were using, and it was linked to a whole bunch of gynecological cancers.
Yeah.
So
think about how many people use just Johnson & Johnson's baby powder,
yeah,
like on kids, like even adults.
Yeah.
I mean, I used it when I was growing up. I mean, luckily I don't have that. I don't have those organs to get that type of cancer. But
yeah.
I mean, if I did, I might jump in that. Might jump in the old class action suit there.
Or the phones. Like maybe people will start getting like, no one really talks on them like that anymore. But
Well, I know, and this will piss a lot of people off.
Oh, here we go.
The vaccines,
yeah,
the COVID vaccines, where apparently, and I don't know how well they would, because neither one of us are lawyers, or none of us are. I wonder how well that whatever thing they agreed to with the federal government, that they can't be sued for any bad things that happen from.
Is that confirmed?
I think it is. I don't think you're.
Yeah,
I
I'm pretty
don't
sure
think you
there's
can sue.
Yeah, they have
But
protection.
that's not just with
and-
this vaccine. I think that's true for like all, right? Like it's not something that was done specifically for this one.
I don't know.
Well, I think it had something to do with the emergency use authorization.
I think you're right.
And how quickly it came out. Because they wanted the companies to, if it's something where, hey, we haven't quite tested this thing all the way, you need to, we'll make it, but we're not trying to get sued in 20 years when we determine that everyone who took it like grows a horn out of their butt.
Right,
So
they're not going to have their mesothelioma moment.
right.
Yeah,
Now, I'm sure some crafty lawyer will find a way, but but there's a the problem that I take with it is if you're going to mandate people do it, and then later on it turns out that, especially when you had people where it was like you're tied to their employment, like
yeah.
Now, what I would see more happening was, did you work for the city of New York between this date and that date, and they
Right.
forced you to take the vaccine? Then people suing the city, not the vaccine
Yeah,
manufacturer.
I think you're right there, and I mean, and maybe even the city would then try and sue Pfizer, or whoever,
Yeah.
on the back end to recoup some of the settlements. Yeah, I think that's probably the clearer way to it. If anything ever comes of it, and I don't know if anything will, but
Right.
I mean, I think that was a lot of people's hesitancy to even taking it. It's like, well, wait a minute. If you're so sure about this thing, why do I have to give up all my rights to sue you in case things go south? Mm-hmm. Maybe you're not so sure about that thing anymore.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you want to fly this new airplane I just built? Here, sign this piece of paper saying you're not going to sue me when you crash.
Right.
Like, are you that? If you had to do that every time you boarded an airliner, would you ever get on it? Like, there's a reason they're putting this protection in here to protect themselves.
I don't like planes anyway. So.
But it's funny. I was thinking about this on the way to work. Like, you have all these chemicals in foods and in food storage devices, plastics, and they say, that it's safe. So they test it on a whole bunch of lab rats. And then the lab rats don't die. But lab rats don't live that long anyway. So
They're rats. They live in the sewer.
Right. Well,
right? Like,
lab rats probably have it pretty good, comparatively speaking, to other rats. Except they have all these chemicals and stuff injected into them. But anyway, so the rats don't die from that. They either die from other things or they feed them to snakes or whatever they do with them when they reach their, shelf life. So, but again, maybe this chemical takes 50 years to have, and over so much dosage to have a negative effect. So one of the things they're saying is that like testosterone levels in men are lower than they were in the past. And one of the links they've drawn is a chemical in plastics that's causing it. So if you have that, now, would you see that in a lab rat if you did an experiment on the lab rat for 20 years? Or not even 20 years, it's not going to live that long, for 2 years. And then the rat just dies of something, or, you're not going to see it.
Right.
From that. But if you have that exposure starting from birth through infant formula or whatever containers that's in, all the way through adulthood as you're eating
so you're
out of
saying
plastic bags and stuff. So,
plastics is the enemy.
well, plastics are just bad anyway. But
I mean, I feel like the ad campaign for the vaccines, it was always like safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. It reminded me of the old cigarette commercials. It'll make your baby healthier. Moms who smoke a pack a day end up with healthy babies.
right, that guy with the weird voice from the 50s.
Right.
Stan smokes cigarettes before he gets on the football pitch. And look at him. He is running faster than everybody. He smokes to make himself perform better.
Marlboro Red. your cigarette of choice.
Right. The athlete's cigarette of choice for performance. But
Newport 1000 for the happy home wife.
But that's seriously how it was back then. And now, like, look, the cigarette company's got the pantsuit off of them.
Yeah.
And
people still buy those things, man.
yeah.
I feel like cigarettes are going away. Like, people don't smoke as much as I remember. Like,
Let me
10 years ago, 15 years ago. Like,
if they didn't, and don't get me wrong, you're right. The number of people that probably smoke is going way down, but there's still some profit there because people still buy them, and they buy them at the highest prices because
that's
they
also
tax
part
the
of the
crap out
reason
of them.
why that the prices are higher, because before everyone smoked, so supply and demand, they got a lot of people wanting to buy them, so they could sell. Well, now they want to find a way to still make their money. So what do? They exploit the people that are still doing it.
I actually don't think it's them. I think local governments. It's basically a sin tax.
Oh, that too, for sure. They're making money off of
it.
it.
I think that half the dollar amount spent on a pack of cigarettes is taxes.
And I think that's actually helped to reduce the amount of smokers. I mean, a pack of cigarettes, I've never smoked, so I just know back in the day you could buy them with some spare change from the machine where you pulled the lever and a pack of smokes came out, right? It was that cheap, and now it's like $10 a pack.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I think it's a good thing that they did this sin tax, because it's stopped a lot of people smoking, and they just want to eat cigarettes and all this stuff too. So it's just a transition. But
they changed over to vaping, which
it's better.
Is it?
But not good.
So,
it's better for sure. There's no tar, but there's other stuff.
Well,
right?
it depends on the juice you use.
The juice.
Some juices.
Tell us about the different juices.
Apparently, there are some juices that have some really, really bad stuff in it. Like there's some that have still have ammonia in them. And then they've got the boutique juices where they only put natural ingredients in.
Organic.
Yes, it's supposed to be the organic juice.
Organic e-cigarette.
I can't. What was the name?
The healthy cigarette.
The healthy cigarette.
They used to make those. So the cigarettes, they used to make them. It was supposed to be no additives in the cigarettes.
They were Nat Shermans.
What was the one with the American Indian
Spirit?
Yes, those.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be just tobacco only. No additives, no preservatives.
Yeah, so I used to smoke, and Yeah, it was probably the dumbest thing I ever did.
You're the subject matter expert on this.
Yeah,
Stuff.
so like, yeah, there was American Spirit, which now they say that's what hipsters smoke. But then there was another company called Nat Sherman that came in like you only get them at like cigar shops. It came in like a hard box that like old school, like opened up like a clamshell.
Nice.
And there'd be like a layer of 10 and a piece of paper, then another layer of 10 underneath. They didn't have menthol, it was mint.
Oh.
Yeah. But, I mean, I quit, more than 10 years ago, so
Did you transition to anything? I mean, you say you quit, so that means you got rid of tobacco out of your life altogether.
No, of course
so
not.
you didn't
So, but here's
quit. So maybe a transition would be a better
yeah. Well,
term.
the thing is, the thing the dip, I always
You dipped while you smoked.
not at the same, not simultaneously.
Well, no, that would be.
That would be weird. Not to get way off track, but that's what we do here. In the U.S., it's avoidance, whereas in other countries, it's the model's a risk reduction model. So, if you say cigarette smoke versus vaping, one would say that they're both bad, but if you're going to do one, vape,
Right.
because you're not ingesting all the tar and the same carcinogens. So, then what's the difference? Maxillofacial cancers are much more survivable than lung cancer, which metastasizes and moves throughout the body much more rapidly than something on your face. So that's the difference between where in the United States, you go to a doctor and say, oh, quit complete cessation risk avoidance, where like Canada is more of a risk reduction. So yes, smoke, on the scale of tobacco, cigarettes are the worst. Dip's probably better. If you're going to do anything, do that, and then try to quit that.
Fun fact about vaping. The major cigarette producers, they the companies that make the vape juice, the popular ones, are owned by the big tobacco companies.
Yeah, well, that's where they get the.
So they're making their money. They're just making it. They're like,
Right.
oh well, I guess we're
Well,
going to make it
and-
this way then.
And now there's a whole bunch of other products. When you get to there's the products that are to replace dip, but there's no tobacco in them at all. It's just like a lozenge. Essentially, they're taking like Nicorette gum and like selling it not as a quit smoking aid, but like as a
Alternative. Yeah, I mean, the
So-
only experience I have is they used to sell packs of gum that were in the shape of cigarettes, and you could actually like blow out some it was
had, like,
probably
powdered
just
sugar or
powder or
something. Yeah.
something like
Those
that.
were legit, by the way.
So yeah, no, they were, and I thought I was too cool for school when I got to buy a pack, and I'd walk around, and man, I'd smoke. I mean, a pack a day.
Well,
Back in the
we
day.
grew up when it was the Winston Cup for NASCAR, and
Well,
when we grew up, they were still allowed to smoke in movies. I had some illegal ways back in my youth, where we had some Indian reservations near us, and you could go, and I guess this really wasn't illegal. You could go buy some cigarettes on the Indian reservation and not have to pay the taxes, and you could bring back a certain number of cartons. Now there were people, I'm not one of them, that would basically fill up their car of the cartons of cigarettes and go back home and sell
Well,
them.
no, you'll get a lot of you'll get like corner stores, like mom and pop stores. Like different states tax them differently, right? So, I know I don't know what states, but they'll drive down to I don't know, maybe one of the Carolinas. I don't know. I'm making up the states. I don't know where it is, but they'll buy as much as they can from like a Sam's Club or that, and they'll drive them back, and then sell them at the corner store. And it's illegal because you're like circumventing tax, stuff like that. You're reselling it, but you're buying it retail. It's well, I should say it's a big deal. 'Cause there's other.
I never understood that though, because this is the business. You're not paying the tax on the purchase. You're paying
it's
it on
all
the sale.
regulations. No, I get you, but I mean,
I always thought that was weird. But speaking of more conspiracy theories, so I heard this one recently. I don't want to say where I heard it from because it gets shut down tomorrow. Some people are saying that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is part of a bigger plot to get more countries to join NATO so that they buy more U.S. planes. Now, hold on now. Hear me out. They're saying Putin's in on it. Guy knows he's not going to be around forever. So he invaded Ukraine, knew it wasn't going to really work out very well for him. But it would scare just enough countries that they would join NATO, and then they would end up buying some F-35s. Now, I would say this is crazy, normally. But
there's more.
there is more. So recently, after the invasion, I believe Finland, and I want to say Sweden, signaled intent to join NATO.
Well, yeah, because if Putin is successful in taking Ukraine, and pardon my ignorance, and then basically assumes control of whatever that country is right above it, that's basically helping in Putin.
Belarus.
Belarus. They're getting dangerously close to Finland and Sweden. A lot closer, too close for comfort. So I don't blame.
Well, Finland actually has a border with Russia,
Right.
and during World War II, there was a war. So the Russians were fighting the Germans, obviously, but prior to fighting the Germans, they were actually fighting the Finns. It was the Winter War, and the border shifted back and forth.
I saw this, and there was there was one main guy,
So
and if they stabbed him, then they all died. Are we talking about the same thing?
No, that's the Avengers. I think.
No,
What movie
no.
are you talking about?
Oh no, that was Game of Thrones. Oh, okay, You're right. Never mind. Okay.
TV series Vikings?
Well, no, it was like the Winter War,
No,
the White Walkers. I
Yeah.
thought that. So this is
Yeah.
different.
This is different.
Different
Okay.
thing completely. Yeah,
Based
so,
more on reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But the Finns and the Russians shared a border, and they fought, and it was quite the bloody conflict. And the Russians really didn't do very well. The Finns, of course, then when the Russians started fighting the Germans, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the Germans were giving the Finns, aircraft, weapons, uniforms. The Finnish, in fact, the roundel on their Finnish Air Force aircraft was a blue swastika in a white circle. So it was very, up there. And I don't think it was ever really, they ever ended friendly at all.
No, so that when they ended, it ended because Finland agreed. So there's a pact, and the agreement is that Finland would remain neutral.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't allow another country to come through Finland to attack Russia. So they basically said, look, because you're right, they wanted to take over Finland to protect themselves, because it's fairly close to Moscow. And so the agreement ended up being, look, basically Russia knew they couldn't take over Finland, but Finland didn't want the hostility. So Finland just said, look, we'll remain neutral.
Has Russia ever won a war?
World War II.
They didn't win World War II.
They got a lot of Poland. They got a lot of those Baltic states.
But ultimately,
They got the Caucasus.
Okay, so, I mean, because we won World War II. Let's just be
Well, the
clear
Russians-
about that. But
the-
they gained a lot in the loss.
Well, the big
did.
three during World War II was Russia, Great Britain, the United States.
They were the Axis
allies.
allies.
They were so essentially at the end of World War II, when in 1944-45, when the Red Army was advancing from the east and the Western Allies were coming from the west. Essentially, everyone understood it became a race. Wherever those forces met, was going to be the line between democracy and communism. So that's why there was pretty much a race to get as much territory as they could. German forces were trying to get west to surrender to the Allies because they'd be treated much better if they surrendered to the Russians. Mm-hmm. So that line, and then what happened afterwards is you had the USSR. So all those countries like Ukraine, Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they were all SSRs. They were part of the Soviet Union. Then you had Poland, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. Those were all satellite states. So that was the buffer zone between East and West. So that's how it all kind of ended up.
And then you also had the Caucasus,
Yeah, but
which was Armenia, Georgia, And then Azerbaijan, I
It's
think.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Kazakhstan is north of Afghanistan.
Well, they wanted those buffer states because I believe Britain still had a heavy influence in Iraq.
Yeah.
So back to this conspiracy. This ranks up there with like the NFL's rigged, right? It would take too many people to be involved.
But
What is though?
To not have someone come out and expose the whole thing.
But what does Putin get out of it?
Nothing.
He gets the golden parachute.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
I mean, so the full blown theory is Sweden, Finland join.
And Putin wants this.
Putin ends up out completely, off in some distant land on a yacht,
Which he can do
Anytime he wants.
anytime he wants.
but not safely. Because people would still go after him, right?
Who's going to go after him?
Everyone the families of everyone he murdered.
Right, yeah.
Maybe.
I
don't
the
know.
guy wasn't exactly nice.
Yeah, but I just
Think about all the people in Chechnya
he's too
that want him dead.
powerful of a man. Even not as.
You're not as powerful as a sniper's bullet. Someone could get you.
So someone could get him now. If they really wanted to.
But what if you got the heat taken off of you by doing whatever this power that be wanted
So
you
you
to
think
do?
that by invading Ukraine, he's taking the heat off of himself?
No. I think by invading
Well, that's
Ukraine,
what you just said.
he's scaring some people into joining NATO.
But the only reason he invaded Ukraine was because he didn't want them to join NATO.
So they say.
I don't know who they are, but yes, that is what they say.
They are very stupid people, but very interesting people nonetheless.
Yeah.
What if that was the grand plan, though? What if that happened?
I don't.
Because
But didn't you say this all comes down to the U.S. wanting to sell more planes?
right. Because let me ask you something. You can't tell me that Vladimir Putin didn't know that his army was this bad.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are saying that he's kind of out there and really lost himself. I mean, I don't know how much of it you can believe, but they say he's been isolated for so many years.
He's terrified of. He's absolutely terrified of COVID.
Yes, you see these pictures of him sitting at tables where it's like
the table's like 30 feet away, long, and he's at one end.
It's like Mr. Smithers in his mansion,
Mr. Burns,
and Mr. Burns, right? They're sitting on opposite ends of the table. It's comical, but you know, I'll buy more into he's lost it than this is some grand, because you know who that would mean is a part of this plan? Our commander in chief, and I'm not convinced he's
part of anything.
Really? I don't know. I don't want to. I don't want to get. But
well, it could be his hand.
Listen, as of last month, HB's laptop is real and confirmed.
It is,
and there's some stuff on there.
There's plenty of stuff on there.
Not that I'm saying that's a part of it, but what if there was the Great Cabal? Let's say that exists, and they're all organizing this.
I don't. There's no way. There's just no way.
I'm so far down the rabbit hole with
Where's
this.
Alex Jones?
The globalists, isn't it?
I'm about to take my shirt off and start yelling. The globalists.
Speaking of InfoWars, I mean, they're done, right?
Nah. So look,
I mean, I know he filed for bankruptcy, but that might have just been like a defense tactic against
it is
this.
so he doesn't have to pay the settlement.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not a real. It's a bankruptcy in air quotes.
Sure. No, I get that, but there's too much loss of life that if this were ever to come out, like it would be like the new world order.
If you go the globalists, but if you go back into history, there are people that say that Churchill and Roosevelt knew that they had broken the Japanese code and they knew they were going to attack Pearl Harbor, and they intentionally didn't do anything. And if you want to get all crazy, the aircraft carriers were not there. The old battleships were, but the aircraft carriers weren't, and they knew that that's how that war was going to be fought.
But I'll buy more into that,
and not battle, because they wanted to get the U.S. into the war.
Yeah, but I'll buy into that before I'll buy into like some crazy conspiracy that we're gonna like go to war.
But if you had said that on December 8th, 1941, you'd be like, "You're a nut. You're okay, sure, whatever."
Maybe. I mean, Everything was in black and white back then. I could see a president knowing an attack was going to happen and allowing it to happen because they wanted to enter the war and wanted an excuse to enter the war. This whole multi-country global conspiracy just to sell some more planes.
So there's two things. One, the World Economic Forum exists, with that German dude at the head, right?
Yeah, Klaus.
The people that say you'll own nothing and like it, and you'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah.
And then you're also assuming that anyone with the power to do these things cares about any other humans other than themselves. You're expendable.
I just think
you're a number on the planet. We'll make more of you.
I just think it takes too many
You've
players.
already got 3 more coming up behind you.
Yeah.
4 if you include Addie.
Right. You're replaced.
Why wouldn't I include her?
Well, I'm thinking like male.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very sexist.
Yeah. So, but you've got your replacements here. So
Sure.
You're under the assumption that they're humans and they care about other humans.
Very true.
They don't. You're pawns in the game. You're the front line, and they're not.
Listen, I love a good conspiracy theory. So I mean,
I thought that one was pretty good.
no.
I just can't figure out, because for the conspiracy to work, like, someone has to have everyone who's involved in it has to get some of the spoils. And I don't see Putin's I don't see his benefit. He's got plenty of money, so it's not like they can give him money.
Maybe they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Like, you're not going to end up in a jail cell, and someone's going to say you hung yourself.
Oh.
You know,
But before this invasion, was he slated for jail? If like we ever got our hands on him, like you see, I mean now he's like being accused of war crimes and all this stuff. So yeah, now he's in a hot seat. But before this, like I don't think he was like about to go to jail for anything.
No, but I don't think. And don't get me wrong. The guy's probably worth billions, right? I mean, all those Russian oligarchs probably are.
Yeah.
But maybe his end game is he just gets to ride off into the sunset. Whereas before, if he did anything else, he'd be looked at as a failure.
Oh, he's gonna only a failure because he's not. It depends on what media outlet, what news cycle you're in. Like, he's not having a lot of success in Ukraine.
He's having no success in Ukraine.
So I don't see how this could be his riding off into the sunset, like, victory.
No. He just gets to disappear.
I mean, he could, yeah, I don't know.
And live that life of luxury. I mean, I heard there's an island that's, empty. That he can go to. Has a really big house on it. But
What, the North Pole?
No. Epstein's island.
Oh, okay, but the North Pole also has one house on it. It's pretty much empty.
no, you can't beat Santa.
Well, that's true.
Come on now.
I'm just trying to figure out what there's got to be some other connect. I don't see his, and to sell American jets, he doesn't get any benefit from that.
Well, the weird thing is, like, someone was talking about the jets that some of those, like, some NATO members have. They have the last MiG produced, and it's a Gen 4 fighter.
So, like,
does Russia have a Gen 5 or 6 fighter?
Yes, but they're not any good. And the Chinese do too. But the thing is, like,
Theirs looks freaking weird.
Well,
by the way. It's got like the fins in the front.
they're all trying to be the. I think it's the Su-37 is the Russian one. They're all trying to essentially have something they can go up against the F-22, which there's nothing that can really mess with that thing.
What about the 35? What's the difference between the 35 and 22?
So the F-35 it's
13.
a stealth fighter. It has some stealth capabilities, and then it has there's a version that has a vertical takeoff and landing, so it can replace the Harrier.
This is the 35 you're talking about.
Yes,
Okay.
the Navy's going to use it. It's designed for export, so other countries can get kind of like, if you want to think of it, a car, like we have the F-35 like GTR, and like the only versions we'll sell overseas is like the F-35 LX.
Gotcha.
So we maintain the highest version of it. Now the F-22 is not for export at all to anyone, not even our best friends. So that's the big difference between the two of them. F-35 is just a absolute beast. Like, it's got vector thrust. It has, twin engines where the F-35 has a single engine.
Mike knows his planes.
Oh,
why do you think I ask him these questions?
So
I know exactly where to go if I need solid factual info on planes.
So like the stuff that you see.
This is, by the way, the only factual part of the show. Is when we talk.
Yeah.
Is when Mike talks about planes. You take this to the bank. Everything else, don't believe any of it.
Right.
This is not news.
So like the MiG-29, F-15 are similar. They're the same generation. But then of the MiG-29 and F-15, there are different variants. So you have, an F-15, C, D, E, F model versus a MiG-29, the different variants of that. So you can have, the first iteration of the MiG-29 versus the latest iteration of the MiG-15 or the F-15, and they're completely mismatched. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
So now we know Russian planes suck. Mm-hmm. Chinese planes not so great. What if I told you? What if Putin was part of the New World Order? And he was willing to sacrifice Russia. So let's say Russia now joins NATO. And now NATO...
They just kicked him out of the
G20. Yeah, well, that's economic stuff. But again, there's got to be some show to this. You can't just do it. You got to have some show. Because
But here's the deal. Why would Russia join NATO?
Because listen, Russia is not a power.
Honestly,
we just found this out. Russia is not a power.
We pretty much have NATO because of Russia.
But what if you now need NATO for China?
Listen, China's warfare is all cyber. Like, I'm not concerned about their ground forces or air forces. Like they're gonna hit you electronically, digitally.
What the Chinese have are 1 billion people.
Mm-hmm. Billion.
There's the population of China.
How many? We have 1 billion.
No, we have 316 million.
Yeah,
316.
So
India and China have more people than us, individually, not combined.
Yeah, but we're so much better.
Yeah, during the
it's true.
During the Korean War,
I'm not moving to Shanghai, and so I agree with you. But
during the Korean War, what they had, because that war never officially ended either. So it was just the Chinese would advance, UN forces would advance back and forth, but the Chinese would do these human wave attacks where they would just send so many people. And yeah, you could be in a machine gun nest and just start mowing people down, but eventually they're going to think like the zombie horde.
You're going to run out of bullets eventually.
Right. That machine gun's going to overheat, run out of bullets, and you're going to have to pull back, and that's what happened.
They were literally coming to the front lines from tunnels between China and Korea.
Yeah.
Craziness.
So that's kind of what, and the thing is, when you have 1 billion people to draft, to turn into conscripts, you don't need to train them. Here's a PPSH, go charge that line. If it's either the Marine shoots you or the commissar behind you shoots you. So pick your bullet. Right. I have a better chance if I go forward. So that's kind of what they did during the Korean War.
Yeah, but the thing is like, we'll never be threatened by that here.
No, but they can threaten you in other ways, economically. Cyber, like you said.
Yeah.
So those two things, like the one thing, like my old boss always told me, you never F with someone's money. And right now, China can F with people's money. Not necessarily, you and I won't care because we don't have a lot of money. But there are people with a lot of money that care.
It's true.
And they don't want their money F'd with. Unless you're Elon Musk.
Well, I mean, I don't have a lot of money, and I still don't want my money messed with.
Well, it was the old Chris Rock saying, if you got 30 million and she wants half, you're not starving.
Right.
But if you make 30,000, she wants half, you may have to move in with your mother.
Yeah. Yeah. That. I just think with. I'm just getting to the conspiracies, and the thing is, conspiracies are often just an attempt to make sense out of stuff that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like someone must be causing this. The problem we've had lately is that, and we've talked about this before, is that with the shutting down everything and closing discourse, all this stuff that was a year ago was conspiracy is now taken as fact.
Right.
Like if you said a year ago that coronavirus was a lab leak, you get kicked off all the platforms for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's the accepted narrative. If you said the vaccine didn't work but did work, but now they're saying, oh well, if I said last year, say this time last year, if I said, hey, the vaccine, it's not going to keep me from getting COVID, it'll just keep me from dying, that would kick me off of whatever. Now that's what the official line is. So the problem
That's
is
less of a conspiracy and more of, I don't want to call it a cover up, but that's just.
No, but what he's saying is these things that were considered conspiracies were actually true. So now people are more likely to believe conspiracies because the conspiracies of yesteryear
I can see
are
that.
now true.
I can subscribe to that.
In
The Hunter Biden laptop thing.
2020, the Hunter Biden laptop, that was Russian disinformation. And I just
Legit,
saw a cut clip of all the media talking heads saying Russian disinformation.
The P tape. That was Russian disinformation.
It's all Russian disinformation.
That was actually Russian
Oddly
disinformation.
enough, that was.
Yeah.
The whole Steele dossier was Russian disinformation.
Yeah.
Which was taken as fact to the point where they did
But
congressional studies on it.
A lot of that has to
AKA
do
the Mueller
with
report.
who's controlling the narrative, who's controlling the media.
But again,
I don't want to get too darn.
The people that are controlling the media, though, are the ones saying conspiracy, fact.
Yeah.
By the way, our other talking heads are the fact checkers. So they're the ones that are telling social media what to take down, what not to take down. Like that Hunter Biden laptop thing. Mm-hmm. The New York Post Twitter account got suspended because of it.
Yep. And Babylon B or something like that. That just recently got kicked off Twitter
for some satire.
from our health official.
No one reads the Babylon B and says, "You know what? This is where I get my news from."
Yeah, no.
They go, This is where I get my comedy from.
There's a shred of truth in every joke they make, but that's also makes it a little bit more comical because it's like it's actually you can relate to it a little bit more. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I know this is getting a little off of the conspiracy theory, but
no, now we're good.
now that Twitter has a new owner. It's going to be interesting to see how that affects the platform because it's just going to be interesting to see, and I think a lot of people are going to lose their minds over what happens. But I'm just looking forward to the shit show. I'm not a big Twitter user.
I feel like those people already lost their minds.
Yeah, well, their lines are lost. I just mean it's going to be a shit show. It's going to be like Donald Trump winning the election all over again, right? They screaming, they're
crying in the streets.
Like the first time when Elon unbans someone, and I don't know if he's going to unban Trump, but if he unbans the Babylon Bee or gives New York whatever their post, I can't wait for that. I don't use Twitter, but it's going to be a good show.
It was just odd. The things what they were banning, and I don't use the word ban lightly. I mean, they literally banned the New York Post from their account until they agreed to take down the news article. Not from the Post, but they couldn't post it on Twitter, and obviously it couldn't be shared. Facebook did the same thing. But their fact checkers were the Washington Post and the New York Times. Those are the fact checkers they use.
Wow. Well, see, there's this whole thing. It's called the Trusted News Initiative.
Right.
And that's all where they've come to say that these are the trusted news sources and these aren't. But it just to me that's creepy.
So
And
very much so.
it's interesting when you see that the side that goes and calls everyone fascists is actually doing what fascists do, and banning people and shutting down discourse. That's all like straight out of the fascist playbook. I always would say, like, if you have to shut down the how weak is your position if you have to shut everything down on the other side?
Well, the other thing is, like, they're already starting to ramp that up now for the midterms. They're the left rallying cry to the polls is, do you really want the authoritarians to take the House and the Senate? Meaning, like, they're saying, do you want the Republicans to win because they're going to be the authoritarians? Meanwhile, in the last year and a half, all the authoritarian stuff has come from one side, and it's not the people in power right now.
Yeah,
And
like, they've actually done stuff that's authoritarian.
Right.
It's like, oof.
And when Jeff Bezos bought the
Washington Post.
right?
Yep.
And I'll tell you, everyone, from that left was like, "Oh, this is great,"
Yeah.
blah blah. So then Elon comes around, who's not on their quote unquote team, and he essentially, I mean, let's just say Twitter is an information source, right? I mean, there's other things you can do with it, but so then he buys Twitter, and it's the exact opposite response than when Bezos bought the Washington Post, right?
Yeah.
But it's essentially the same thing. Talking about, that's it. It's going to be free reign and all this stuff, and he's all this misinformation. It's like you said, literally everything that they say is literally everything that they're doing.
yeah.
They're narcissists.
And the weird thing is, it's not like Musk is overly political.
He's not,
Like,
but I
I-
think if you read between the lines, like you know where he stands.
Well, here's the thing. He's
But he doesn't. But he's not flamboyant about it.
He bought Twitter because it wasn't allowing what he thought was free speech. That was his big thing. Like, he's big on free speech. I couldn't tell you his position on climate other than the fact the guy owns Tesla, which is making electric vehicles, and Solar City, which is trying to turn every house into a solar plant.
Yeah, he's realistic about it because he says he's like the leading manufacturer of electronic vehicles in the world.
Yes.
Yet will come out and say we need to produce more fossil fuels, right? Because he knows, like, yeah, this is the future, but we can't ignore the now. Yeah. So he's I think he has the right ideas, but just also the right approach. Like, you can't just completely get rid of fossil fuels and just get electric cars like that.
There's nothing to replace it with. And
We don't have the energy production to power it all.
yeah. Yeah, and that's, I think we
We can
hit
barely
on that.
power the homes in this country. Never mind if you add cars on top of that. And
Yeah, if you were to add up all the energy that the transportation sector spends, let's get rid of aircraft because there's really no batteries are so heavy that
It'll never.
in an aviation application it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some small aircraft that have hybrid power plants, and they just tested an old I forget the model. It's a Cessna. It's a twin-engine Cessna. Like, one of the engines is electric. One is
Gas.
Gasoline.
Fuel.
And it can't fly solely on the electric one. But, it can't take off solely on the electric one. But here's the thing, like, the batteries are so heavy. A Tesla Model 3 weighs 4,000 pounds. So that's what a Suburban weighs. And a Tesla Model 3 it's a small car.
Yeah.
It's a compact car. So you can't for 1 second tell me that there's going to be a commercially viable airliner that's powered by batteries. It's not going to happen.
powered by tobacco.
Hey, but you want to
Powered by nuclear energy.
You want to talk about conspiracy theories? What about the one where the guy claimed that he invented a car that ran on water, that turned water into hydrogen, and then died of a heart attack shortly after making his announcement, and you never heard of that technology again?
What, hydrogen cell?
No. The fact that he had a car that more or less you filled up the tank with water. in the car.
Wasn't that? I mean, hydrogen's kind of like you fill it up with hydrogen and it poops out water.
Yeah, the only exhaust is water vapor.
Right. Sort of the same,
Yeah.
but different.
But here's the thing. So you put it past the big, bad petrochemical industry. So someone comes out with a new technology that can run, that doesn't need fossil fuels to run. So they could easily buy that technology and just shelve it and make sure it never goes to market. So then think, well, now you've got the battery makers and all that other stuff that are making a bunch of money. No one's going to need them either if you're using figure out the next car that runs on unicorn farts or whatever it is. So they buy them out, and they just become the next big bad industry that buys things out.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how many innovations got shelved because a legacy of the industry bought it out to shelve it.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what that is. Like, obviously, we're never going to know.
Right, like
All
just see in their closet of stuff that they...
Just like, what could we have had?
Yeah.
Could we have had flying cars by now? Mm-hmm. Like, is there a small nuclear power plant that could be powering jets right now or spacecraft? Mm-hmm. Like, could we be Star Trek right now?
Yeah.
With a nuclear engine on it?
I mean, Back to the Future showed us that we should have had flying cars by 2005.
Listen.
Yeah.
Back in 1985?
1985.
We're not really keeping up. I mean, shoot, we had the Jetsons in the 70s.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I don't know what was powering that little putt-putt thing.
His
but
car came out of a briefcase. Yeah. He used to carry it around with him. But, the thing is, like, that sort of thing has to happen. So, I mean, if you even think of on the retail level, like, you ever see two Targets that are really close to each other? Like, why are these two Targets here? Target just signed the lease for that space to keep Walmart out.
Probably, yeah.
And, like, look at in Annapolis, you've got Home Depot.
And Home Depot.
Home Depot. They did it so that Lowe's couldn't move into one of those spots.
Right.
So that one Home Depot might not make any money compared to the other one, but it keeps people from going to Lowe's. It keeps them out of their little territory there.
Or at least keeps people going to
a Home Depot.
A Home Depot. Yeah.
Like, the closest Lowe's is either there's one in Glen Burnie.
And there's one in Bowie.
Yeah.
Which is 30 minutes away from either of us.
Yeah. So
either of us, like, we don't live 2 seconds from each other. That was a dumb comment of the day right there.
But both of which are 30 minutes away.
Yes.
So
there you go.
Yeah, you've got plenty of space there that can
I just wonder, like, I guess the biggest, like, the technology thing I can think of, there's two of them, VHS versus Beta. Mm-hmm. Although VHS didn't buy Beta, it just outmarketed them.
Yeah.
And then you had Blu-ray versus HD DVD.
Yeah, and you also had, remember there was regular DVD versus DivX.
Right.
Yeah, but I think HD DVD versus and Blu-ray was kind of like VHS and Beta. Like, yeah. Blu-ray just did a better job. And not only that, what really helped the Blu-ray was the PlayStation 2.
Well, I mean, that was Sony versus Toshiba.
Or whatever gaming console was out. Maybe it was PlayStation 3 at the time. I think PlayStation 2 was the first DVD console. Yeah. But the fact is, you could buy a PlayStation, and it was a Blu-ray player. Right? So you got, like, 2 for 1 almost, where an HD DVD player, you had to buy it separately. It didn't come... so it was really PlayStation that helped put Blu-ray over the top. Now,
I think it was PlayStation 2.
I think PlayStation 2 was
PlayStation
DVD.
1 used it used the disc but had the black bottoms. It didn't have the CD bottom.
Yeah.
So that was PlayStation 1. That was the gray one with the 2 knobs on it, but it didn't. PlayStation 2 looked like your more modern PlayStation.
Yeah, PlayStation 3 was Blu-ray.
Oh, right. 2 didn't even have it?
Blu-ray. PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2 is what helped DVDs take off, because just like Blu-ray, instead of going out and buying your standalone DVD player, you could have a PlayStation 2.
That would
so
do, yeah.
and you ask yourself, Sony, there had to have been some sort of like handshake agreement. Like, listen, make your system use DVDs, make your system use Blu-ray, because I think
It's a sales pitch.
The Xbox either did I don't even think it did HD DVD. I think it was just like it was literally those formats excelled because of the accessibility of the hardware to
So Toshiba created the HD DVD, and they didn't have the console like PlayStation, like Sony did. So they couldn't put it in. And so basically Sony was just like, I'm going to sell more of these units because I can put them in PlayStations, which means the cost is going to be lower. And then they basically were able to say, you can have the Blu-ray tech. Like if they went to like Magnavox or something, someone who was making DVD players at the time, you can have the tech for a lot less than than Toshiba's going to sell you HD DVD.
And people would buy PlayStations because they wanted a Blu-ray player, and and vice versa, right? So it was a win.
Well, how many like when that stuff came out, how many dudes sold that to their wife by saying, "Oh, it's a
Right.
Yep, it does this too. This is great."
100%. No, 100%.
Yeah, because like there's plenty of guys out there that were like, "Yeah, it does both things." It's really. I didn't buy a new video game console. I bought a Blu-ray player.
They brought in the old timey guy. Right. Yeah, it plays Blu-ray, say.
Yeah,
Smoke some cigarettes.
yeah, I can play your records. But yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of dudes that did that. But yeah, how about Dreamcast? What did that do?
Oh, Sega Dreamcast, man. I was a huge Sega Genesis fan. Like
Genesis
huge.
is great.
Yeah.
Like I liked it
NHL '94.
Yeah.
The best hockey game ever.
The downfall of the Dreamcast was because they figured out how to pirate games without a physical mod on the console itself. So you could essentially rip a game off the legit disc, and burn it. This is when CD burners were like the fad, and DVD burners. And once you rip the game to your computer, you applied a patch to the files, and then burned it onto a disc, and you would just put it into the Dreamcast, press play, and it worked just like it was the legit disc. And that's ultimately, it should have, I mean, every console dies, but the Dreamcast died earlier, and they realized that piracy was going to be just out of control, and so it was an early death.
Yeah,
That's another episode, by the way.
and I've heard
all the systems.
Yeah,
Because who did that go up against?
The Dreamcast was around the time
that
of like the
N64?
Nintendo 64.
Or was that Nintendo's GameCube? I think so. GameCube was Nintendo's first foray into the disc games, whereas N64 they were still using cartridges.
yeah.
But
So the GameCube was released in 2001. And the Dreamcast was released in 1998.
so it went against the N64.
the Dreamcast. So it went up against the 64. The 64.
That was so hard to beat because you had GoldenEye.
Oh, yeah.
4-player, like they had the 4-player modes,
Yeah.
and it didn't cost an arm and a leg to get to get controllers. Mm-hmm. So GoldenEye, Mario Kart 4-player.
Oh yeah.
Man, I remember being in the dorms playing those.
64 released in 96, and then the Dreamcast came out in 98, and then 01 was the GameCube. So the Dreamcast kind of came in the middle, and that's why it kind of survived, because it was like 2 years into the 64, and then so it kind of had a run, but then the GameCube came out. And
But the PlayStation came out that year, in 2001, right?
The PlayStation
2000?
came out. I think it came out. The PlayStation 2 was 2000, which didn't do. Yeah, that was 2000. So 2 years, roughly 2 years.
Original PlayStation was 2000.
No,
Or PlayStation
PlayStation 2 was 2000.
And that trounced the Dreamcast.
So I got into an Uber. It was a Chrysler Pacifica. So it was me and my wife and like one of her friends. It was a group of us. Gets to this Uber in Annapolis. We drove right home. And this thing, the driver's like, hey, like, you know when Uber drivers like trying really hard to get that high rating and whatever kind of tip. She was like, hey, so welcome aboard. He said, welcome aboard the Chrysler Pacifica. And then he goes, yeah, if you want, you can play Dreamcast. And I'm like, Dreamcast? He goes, I have Banaka. I was like, what? Like, did I just fall into 2000 in the Pacifica with Dreamcast and Banaka? You want a bottle of water? Like, where am I?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, there's some really good stories to be told about game systems and release. Like Nintendo partnering with Sony on a console, only to find out that Sony then went around and made their own console. And there is a Super Nintendo that's combined with Sony PlayStation technology. There's a prototype floating around out there. It's a really good story. But
it's
you're
a whole
right.
episode.
Yeah, that's a whole episode.
Maybe we'll get to that episode in the future. I want to thank Portac Limited Wine and Spirits for sponsoring this episode. Over in the Baydale Plaza in Arnold, Maryland, 21012. The address over there is, it's 1264 Baydale Drive. Phone number is 410-974-0800. They do curbside pickup. Go ahead and call in your order ahead of time. And we'd like to thank them for their sponsorship of this show, as well as the past one. Hopefully we'll come up with some new and interesting podcast episodes, and we will see you next time.